Alright, so today we're going to be driving this BR182 Siemens locomotive running a S-Bahn service, and this is the one of the services scenarios that you can do in Dream Sim World 2, and this had the highest difficulty rating for this particular DLC, which is the Rapid Transit DLC based in Dresden. So first let's seat in the driver's seat, master switch to forward, train brakes to full service, train brakes to position 1B, and we unlock the left doors. Perfect. So I always do a couple changes here. I change the contrast, activate PZB, activate CIFA, exterior master light switch on, marker lights, and train lights on as well. Great. Let's turn on AFB. Excellent. And let's set it to 30 kph, which you can see is the maximum speed limit here. So we're taking the service all the way from here to Leipzig Messe, which is going to be around, so this is where we come out of the tunnels. Leipzig Messe should be around here. I really like this DLC, I really like this route, because it's a typical S-Bahn style route in Germany and Austria and some other places like Zurich, this type of German style S-Bahn services where we have essentially regional trains coming from outside of from the suburbs and from the neighboring villages to a big city. In this case it would be Dresden, and all these services converge into like what would be a main line through the city, and then they fan back out again into other suburbs and villages further ahead, as opposed to a metro service in which it works more like a web and it's only within the city. So we don't have like long distance metro services as much as we do long distance S-Bahn services. Alright, let's lock the doors. Perfect. I just moved the mic away from me a little bit, releasing the brakes, and we go. Even though the HUD says that we can move ahead to 50 kph, I'm not going to do it because we're technically still changing switches and I have not seen a signal that tells me otherwise, so I'll wait. And I will now show you perhaps one of the best features of this train, the Roadrunner. So as I pass the 120 kph board, I just hit A and B, one after the other. And when we pass that, when the back of the train passes that point, it goes beep beep, and we know that we can move ahead. Sorry, this was the 120 board that we were looking for. Usually when there is a confusion like this, the 120 board or the speed limit board is going to have an arrow indicating what side, which of the tracks we're supposed to be following that speed in. In this case I did get confused, so, but I did not speed, so it's fine. yeah, extremely powerful locomotive. This one, it's the one that so this is a Siemens locomotive. It was designed maybe like 15-20 years ago, but it's extremely powerful. It's one of the main workhorses of European mainline operators. It's mostly used in Austria as the locomotive that pulls the railjet trains, but it's also extensively used in cargo because it has like extremely powerful traction motors, and it can pull a lot of weight just with a single locomotive. So for any cargo that has to go through the Alps, for example, it's a perfect locomotive to use. And it can do 230 kph, so that's actually insane. I think the record, so there's one of these locomotives was modified to try to achieve what is essentially the world speed record for an electric locomotive, and if I'm not mistaken, it was achieved at like 360 kph, something like that. So yeah, insanely fast. I don't remember where I heard this, but apparently one of these locomotives, if you attach it to a consist that is heavy enough, and then you put in the power like directly, you go from 0 to max, the locomotive is so strong that it's gonna snap the cables and the joint that holds it together to the rest of the consist. So yeah, beautiful machine, extremely powerful. Right, we're approaching Leipzig. Oh, it's not Dresden, it's Leipzig, obviously. Let me put in the electric brakes. Braking a bit early. There we go. So typically in German stations there is a H sign that is going to be next to the track, and it indicates where you should stop the train. And if there's no indication, you should stop it like as far ahead as the platform as you need, in the platform as you need, so that the entire consist fits in the platform. Yeah. So here we are. We arrived at like 30 seconds ish early, so we're gonna be stopping here for about a minute. Let's take a look at the train. Oh, I did not turn on my lights. Why didn't that work? Okay, there you go. And what else do we have? Some different screens here. The AFB handle is on the way. Okay, good. Excellent. We have to wait another 30 seconds, so in the meantime, let's take a look at the back of the train. Not bad. I like the fact that in the new update they added a lot more people on the platforms, so the whole game feels a bit more alive, you know. Alright, let's get ready to depart. Lock the doors. The T sign goes white at the bottom of the panel. We release the brakes and we can go ahead and depart. And on top of being extremely powerful, this locomotive is also really good sounding. very musical. So there's a 90 speed limit ahead. Sorry, an 80 speed limit ahead that we need to acknowledge with the PCB acknowledge. There we go. And this 80 speed limit is going to carry all the way from here until we exit the tunnels on the other side of Leipzig. I don't know why I got confused about Dresden. I think it's because Dresden is the new DLC, if I'm not mistaken. So I was thinking about that. So we're not stopping in the station here. This one is tricky because it's downhill and it's not super long. So it's a bit tricky every once in a while to stop here. Just gonna move forward. And we see 80 kph here. Good. So as soon as we enter the tunnels, it gets a bit trickier to drive the train. Obviously, you have less reference points, but this train can like brake pretty effectively from 80 to 0 in about like 300-ish meters. Sorry, I had to pause there for a second. But we're now coming into the Leipzig tunnels. So this is very reminiscent of the way the S-Bahn network works in Vienna, in Austria, where there's a bunch of lines that converge together essentially, and they go into tunnels underneath the city. And in the case of Vienna, those tunnels go from Matzleinsdorfer Platz, from between Matzleinsdorfer Platz and then Wien Hauptbahnhof, and then they go underneath the city. They follow a bit like the U4, the subway line 4, into Wien Mitte, where you can change to the city airport train, and then they essentially go towards. There's multiple lines that go through the same tunnels. They go through then to Prater, which is like a big park in Vienna, and then they come out ahead and they continue along eastwards, let's say. And then westwards they go towards Baden and so on. There's also another line, S-Bahn line, that goes more westwards, and it goes through Ottakringe, and it does another type of loop. That one is a bit segregated, and you have to take it from the western station. And there's another one that goes north, following the Danube River. And that one you have to, it goes as far as, what's the name of that station again? I forgot, but it's a station in the 9th district. Alright, I believe in the tunnels we're gonna do every single stop. So because I'm not used to this, to driving this route as much as I would like to, I'm still using the HUD as a way of guiding myself and as a way of knowing where I should start braking. So I will accelerate up to 70-ish, 75-ish, then start braking around 350. And that should be plenty of braking power. Yeah. Nicely done. So the station, as I was mentioning before, is Franz Josef Bahnhof in Alsergrund, and yeah, that you can take that train, the S-Bahn that goes up to there. It essentially follows the Danube towards Krems an der Donau, small city north of Vienna. And technically, the locomotive that is used for some of those S-Bahn services is exactly the same as this one. And they have recently been remodeled. So they used to be these like weasel. They used to have this weasel livery, which was like light gray-ish and red, with obviously a picture of a weasel on it. And they changed them to a CityJet, which I don't know. It looks more modern, obviously. I enjoy both. I like them both. And it is also the same consist that is used for the city airport train, using a different livery as well, and a more remodeled interior. So pro tip, if you're going to Vienna and take the plane, do not use the city airport train. It's extremely expensive and in my opinion not worth it. I believe it costs like 12 euros one way for an adult, whereas if you take the regular Austrian railways, there's an S-Bahn line that goes to the airport as well as intercity services using Railjet consists. And from Vienna to the airport, so from Vienna main station to the airport, I believe it's like €1.40, something like that. So yeah, if you are ever in need of taking the train to Vienna airport, just use the regular Austrian railways. Next stop is Leipzig Hauptbahnhof, and then we're going to start coming out of the tunnels. This station is very long compared to the others. I don't know why they made it so long. Perhaps they were planning on using maybe like certain express services that would only, using bigger trains, longer trains, and they would only stop at the main station and then like just come out of the tunnels immediately. I don't know if that is actually the case, but it could be. That's one of the reasons I would see for it. Because this station is about twice as long as the rest. So we've been on time, I believe, for all our stations. These points that I lose, I think they're just for stopping a bit ahead or behind where I should be stopping. But we've been on time. every single time. So now we're finally coming out of the tunnels, and our next stop is Leipzig Messe. You have to acknowledge this PCB signal. Give it a bit more power because we're going to come up to a very steep incline coming out of the tunnels. You see the speed is barely going up, 4% grade. This is stuff on the locomotive. Oops, I hit the PCB instead of hitting the SIFA. Now we're out of the tunnels, and we can see Leipzig Hauptbahnhof there at the back for long distance trains. And 100. Excellent. We're gonna fly through the station. And 100. That 70 kph is not for us. That's for the line going left. Bit more power. Although the HUD is indicating like 120 maximum speed, it is not the case. And we go on to LZB, and I can just tell it to go to Vmax, and we should be fine. So LZB is like a primitive automatic train control system where the braking is controlled by the train automatically. Mainly used in German main lines for high-speed trains, because there is this mandate, let's say, that if you are driving above 160 kilometers per hour, you can only drive it if you have in-cab signaling, which is what LZB is. And it is quite old. I mean, it's been used since the early days of the Intercity Express in the 1990s. And it's being replaced by European Train Control System Level 2 and Level 3, mainly in the newer Intercity Express lines that have been built, and these trains are being retrofitted as well. So the older trains, so for example this model would be an older model because it doesn't have the ECTS compliant screen, ETCS compliant screen. So this uses the old LZB type screen, and many of these new trains are fitted with both, just for retrocompatibility uses. But ETCS is a much better system. It has better communication in between the trains and the signals. It's just a better system overall, safer for everyone, and also allows the trains to be closer together. So overall, I think it's a great thing to use ETCS in these new main lines. Perfectly on time, Leipzig Messe. I mean, we're technically a minute 50-ish seconds late. But oh well. That Bombardier Talent on the left, it does have the ETCS compliant screen, let's say. And in fact, if you're interested in driving a ETCS train in Germany, I recommend the Susi 3 train simulator. It's a bit pricey. I think it's like 60 on Steam, but it has a lot of routes. To be honest, I hate older trains and older routes and all that stuff. I know people are like into it a lot. I don't like that type of stuff, so I've only used it for like main lines. You can drive the Düsseldorf to Köln S-Bahn services, which are a lot of fun, as well as Intercity Express and so on. And it does have like one of the newer Intercity Express lines that go towards Erfurt, and that one has ETCS level 3, and it's a lot of fun to drive. Alright, so we're at the end, and let's hope I got a gold. Oh no, we still have to go, yeah, we still have to go all the way to the end. Right. Alright. So because we're under LZB, I'm just gonna push this AFB system to 200. And let's go and depart. Technically the maximum speed is 160, so I'll just leave it at 160. And essentially now the train is in autopilot. I can just leave it there and it's gonna drive itself all the way to the end. I just have to acknowledge CIFA every once in a while, and that would be it. Very safe systems. There you go, CIFA. Acknowledged. And yeah, I mean, if we keep on just discussing a bit about the train protection systems and so on, I'm not quite sure what to think about, the future of railways, because every single aspect of the railways is being essentially automated, which is good for a bunch of reasons, not only safety but also efficiency and reliability of the systems. You remove the human aspect out of the equation, and it can lead to less accidents or less delays. It's not the same, obviously, as driving self-driving cars, essentially, like the Tesla and so on, because that's something where you have a lot of external inputs. There's people walking, there's people biking on the road, there's people running, there's animals and so on. With railways, you have the advantage that everything is segregated. Everything is its own little system, separated from everything else. So it is much easier to automate everything and make a very efficient system. Like the Chinese high-speed rail system or the Japanese high-speed rail system, they're extremely efficient and they're both essentially completely automated. Now, the problem for that is that obviously, for people like me or other like train enthusiasts, whoa, that was a big lag spike. It means that driving the trains becomes just a bit boring because you're not doing much. But it is also true that that those systems are extremely expensive to install, and therefore it would be normal that many of the lines, especially older lines, end up not installing them, or lines that do not see much use. And for things like cargo trains, fully automating is not necessarily the best, because like sometimes you need that knowledge of, okay, how does this locomotive react in this part of the track with this sort of consist, applying the power, making sure that you don't have like wheel spin, making sure that the train is like under control at all times. In a cargo, in a freight train is a bit more involved, let's say, because let's be honest, I mean, this locomotive is like overkill for the concepts that we're having. I think it's only like 3 or 4 cars, there's 3 wagons, so it's essentially as if we were pulling nothing at all. But it is important, you know, for the user, for the commuter, to be able to rely on a more efficient system that can probably give them, you know, more trains per hour, faster trains, smaller distances in between trains, and so on. So overall, it's a good thing. Obviously, not everything is going to be automated in the future, but it's important to keep in mind how it's going to be, you know, how things are gonna change. SIFA. One of the countries that would really benefit from upgrading their signaling system would be the Netherlands, because at the moment they only have the high-speed line going from, not even from the airport, because the airport is still like traditional signaling, but after Schiphol Airport towards Rotterdam, it like deviates next to a town called Hoofddorp, I think, and then it goes to Rotterdam and then onwards towards Paris and Belgium. Okay, we're braking. And there's another line that goes from Rotterdam towards the German border. That one is used exclusively for freight traffic, and those are the only two lines that have ETCS installed. And the Dutch signaling system and the way they control the trains is very outdated. It's not too dissimilar in terms of signaling, of like, you know, trackside signaling from the German system, but in terms of how the train is controlled, there's like these national like speed limits that you have to follow. Maximum speed is like 140 kph, and it's just very outdated. So it would be actually quite good for them to upgrade their trains, upgrade their rolling stock and the signaling to the ETCS. Yeah, especially since they have the money to do so. And also because a lot of Dutch people rely on the train network. Living in the big cities, in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, is very expensive. Very, very expensive. It's difficult, it's not comfortable. So many of these workers are simply gonna live outside and commute every day. And if you have a network that is more reliable than the one that is in place now, I mean, it's obviously better for everyone involved, right? It was also quite common for Dutch people to bike to work, and if you live more on the outskirts of town, they would bike to the nearest train station and just grab a train to the city center. So as you can see, the train effectively drives itself, which is, you know, interesting to say the least. Let's brake it manually here. Perfect. Good work. That is it for this duty. Typo there, but it's okay. Turning the train off, AFB off, throttle off, train brake release, and parking brake on. There we go. Let's close the windows as well. No, not shunting. Close that window, close that window, and then we can disembark the train. Alright, that's it. Cheers.